Talking's AEW and WWE. Oh yeah! Let's meet the hosts. First, a man hailing from the hub city in Indiana. He goes by @TooSweetKyle on Twitter. The host, Kyle Gagliardi. And your co-host, hailing from the valley of Lake Tahoe. He goes by @JimTuck89 on Twitter. Jim Tucker. And last but not least, hailing from the cornfield somewhere in Indiana, the full-time part-timer, Ian Garavaglia. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram @PodOnTheMark.
What is going on, everyone? You're listening to the On The Mark Wrestling Podcast, hosted by the Marks, for the Marks, and I am your host, Mr. OTM, Kyle Gagliardi. And my co-host this evening is my good friend, Ian Garavaglia. Ian, what's up, dog?
What's up, dog? Hell of a weekend. Hell of a weekend of wrestling. Hell of a week of wrestling so far.
True.
I'm lively. I'm excited to talk some AEW today because, as we all know, I only like AEW and don't like WWE.
Okay, don't confuse the listeners. You watch both.
No, I absolutely hate WWE.
Yeah, he's an AEW shill. He's getting paid Tony Khan money. Maybe a little bit of, but we're not going to talk about that here on Facebook, of course, because we are live. I'm just kidding, by the way, people. This is not serious, but it's good to be here. I'm not in the best of spirits, but that's not related to wrestling. That is related to college basketball. Nobody here cares about college basketball, so I'm not even going to talk about it. But other than that, I agree with you, Ian. I thought we've had a great weekend and a great week of wrestling. NXT on Tuesday was honestly one of the best free shows we've gotten from NXT in a long time. I'm assuming you didn't get a chance to watch it.
Did not, but honestly, I might watch it back at some point.
Yeah, it was good stuff. Shout out to your dad, the podcast dad from the Wrestling Junkies. He was the one that actually called Tony D'Angelo facing off against Ilya Dragunov at Stand and Deliver, and that's the matchup that we are going to get. And of course, you know, AEW Dynamite, their fallout from AEW Revolution that happened this Sunday. The big thing being, of course, Sting's retirement, but a lot of other things happened. But before we get into all that good stuff, Ian, don't forget, I'm telling the listeners right now that we have some fire merch, one of them being the t-shirts that I'm wearing right now, available now at the OnTheMarkWrestlingPodcast.com. You can get yourself some merch there. No discount code this week. But if you pay attention to our show, every PLE, every pay-per-view week, we do a discount, so stay tuned for that. And Ian, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about the Main Event Wrestling Network?
Main Event Wrestling Network. We are a conglomerate, long name, but we are a network that just celebrates pro wrestling and the content creators that create pro wrestling content, talk about it, read about it, view about it. Honestly, everything. Yeah, watch it. There's a lot of stuff you could do with pro wrestling, and that's basically what we do. A lot of smaller creators. We have a lot of blogs. The blogs have been on fire recently.
Fantastic,
the Great Brown Hope. Great Brown Hope is a machine. So, and if you guys have not given them just a quick little 2-minute read just to brighten up your day, very much worth it. And you can find that at mainevent_net. And we are looking for new collaborators, so please reach out.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple. If you just want to talk about the positive things happening in professional wrestling, you want to talk about it, we are giving you that platform. And don't forget that this Sunday live at, I believe, 10 a.m. Central Time, we could adjust that time a little bit, but there will be episode 4 of the Main Event Mixer where we discuss what happens on Friday Night SmackDown because, of course, The Rock is going to be there to answer Cody's rebuttal. And then, of course, you have AEW Collision on Saturday, and we might as well talk about that as well. But before we talk about AEW Revolution and what a great pay-per-view that was, we got to spend some quality time at Warrior Wrestling this past Friday, live at Revolution Brewing in Chicago. Before we get into, exactly kind of what happened there, Ian, you want to tell the listeners a little bit about the atmosphere that we had there if they did not see it on social media?
Oh man, Warrior Wrestling continues to put on incredible shows. And if you guys did not see the interview, you can also listen back to last week's interview with Steve from Warrior Wrestling, who is the head booker, owner. Give him any title that you want. Good friend of ours. Put on another incredible show. It was at the Revolution Brewery. If you are around the area, you know exactly what Revolution Brewery is, making fire IPAs, and they hosted a wrestling show that was an in-house show only. There is no recordings or some small videos you could find every now and then.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, that crowd was incredible. It was literally in a tap room brewery, giant bar, not an open bar, but it was
kegs everywhere.
Kegs everywhere. It was
Barrels
awesome.
Everywhere.
Barrels, yes. And the crowd came alive too, which was awesome.
Yeah, it was definitely that perfect blend of the casual wrestling fan and the diehards, but it seemed like the casuals were having more fun than the diehard wrestling fans. And of course, you get a couple anti-heroes in your system like myself. Ooh. A lot of things become, more entertaining, but I'm not even lying to you guys. And of course, you can't see the whole entire card yet. It might be a possibility in the future, but when I say not one match missed, every single match delivered on that card. It was nice seeing Kylie back. Mustafa Ali got a great reception from his home crowd. I mean, just top to bottom quality show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Another highlight was Trevor Outlaw. He really showed out. Had a surprise. I'm not going to announce what that surprise. Well, I guess we can.
No, we can announce it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Lance Archer rudely interrupt Trevor Outlaw. He was about to get a title shot, and then Lance Archer just invited himself to the show. Not a fan. Honestly, I'm tired of what Steve has been doing to poor Trevor Outlaw. We'll figure out something. We'll figure something out. But honestly, we're going to try to get this guy on the podcast at some point. Maybe actually give him a channel to voice his opinions, because obviously he's been muted everywhere else.
I was going to say, we might as well make that an open invitation. Trevor Outlaw, if you're checking us out live right now or at a later date, you have an open invitation to address your treatment in Warrior Wrestling, because we believe that you have been underutilized and deserve to be higher on the card. So we will maybe be talking to Trevor Outlaw in the near future, but obviously don't want to spend too much time on that show just because not everybody was able to see what happened. But nonetheless, a fantastic time hosted by some tremendous people. A lot of hardworking individuals are a part of Warrior Wrestling that help put that show together. Not a lot of people get to see the family and the community it takes, but I mean, one guy, for example, Matt from That's Freaking Wrestling podcast, is a guy that we met at Warrior Wrestling. Now his podcast is taking steps. It's evolving, but he's also just one of those true good wrestling fans. Like, that's what it's like when you go to a Warrior show.
And honestly, fun little fact for those that don't know, Warrior Wrestling was kind of the idea for starting Main Event Wrestling Network, because that's how we met Matt. And then we started noticing we're starting to grow just by talking and collaborating with one another. So why not do this with everybody? Because I think everybody deserves this growth. So that's a little fun fact for everybody that doesn't really care about the business side, but
yeah, for sure. So thanks again to everybody at Warrior for letting us hang out. We didn't have a job. We usually have a job, but we just got to enjoy it as fans, which was great. And then I made the road trip down to Indianapolis Saturday. Got to catch GCW, and I tell you what, I'm still catching up on sleep, Ian. But I was able to watch AEW Revolution live, and I tell you what, if it wasn't such a good show, I probably would have fallen asleep. But from top to bottom, maybe one stinker that we will talk about, but one of the best AEW pay-per-views I think we've gotten in their history.
I said it was the best at the end of the night, and we went to the All Out with Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole showing up. And we were there in person, and I still think what we saw this Sunday was the best pay-per-view AEW's ever rolled out.
Yeah, it was refreshing to see, because they went through some struggles as of late. There wasn't a lot of buzz, I think I should say, around All Elite Wrestling, but I think they have this rejuvenated energy, especially with getting Ospreay, getting Okada, which we're going to talk about. And then next week being big business, you got to assume Mercedes Moné is going to be showing up there as well. But Ian, I say we get right into the card. Let's start off here with Christian Cage versus Daniel Garcia for the TNT title. You predicted that Daniel Garcia was going to walk out with the TNT title. That did not happen. Our father, Christian Cage, once again retains his championship. I thought this was a good way to start off the Revolution card. I'm not surprised to see Christian Cage retain, but tell me a little bit about what you thought of this opener.
I'm not surprised that he retained. I'll get that off my chest in the first place. I saw it going either way. But at the same time, this match reminded me how good Christian Cage is in the ring, but also showed me how good Daniel Garcia is as a face. This guy is lovable, and he knows how to work as a face. His selling was incredible the entire match. I had no brewskis in me at this point, and this was one of my sleeper picks of the night, matches of the night, which we will get to the definitive match of the night eventually. Yes. But this match absolutely was incredible. And even with the match not ending how, as a fan, I would like it to end, I really wanted Daniel Garcia to get the strap because I thought it was a good time to, but going to play the long game with Daniel Garcia. Hopefully it pays off in the end, but we're going to have to get through Edge versus Christian first.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think Daniel Garcia has a lot of parallels right now with Swerve. The crowd's getting behind both these guys. They want to see them succeed, but I think with just like Swerve's situation, waiting a little bit more, giving the fans a little bit more time to appreciate Daniel Garcia and dive into the character a little bit more will be beneficial in the long run, because I could definitely see Daniel Garcia being a guy to hold TNT gold here in 2024. But you talk about Adam Copeland. That's something that I mentioned last week, that I still think that he has to be the one to defeat Christian. It seems as if we are going to get that match in Toronto in a couple weeks. I might as well just go out and ask you right now, because we might not have time to predict it on other shows. Do you think Adam Copeland ultimately is the one to take that title off of Cage?
I mean, if we're talking about low-hanging fruit, that's the lowest hanging fruit. So on paper, it should be happening. But I would not be shocked. Christian Cage has that heat that honestly seemingly does not want to stop. And his faction has been incredible. I love the faction work they've been doing. It's really Bloodline-esque. It really is. And I don't want to compare Christian Cage's family to the Bloodline.
Different Bloodline, though.
It's a very different Bloodline. But I mean, the way they are working, the way the story has been unfolding, it's an unstoppable force of a lot of outside interference that we know is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yet we feed into it. Because honestly, there was many times, like even me just saying Daniel Garcia was going to win Sunday night. That meant they're on a good track. So I don't know where it's going to go. Obviously, I think this is one of them storylines that's found its footing, and it could go any way, and I'm not going to complain.
No, I don't think we have anything to complain about with the TNT title picture right now. And like you were saying, credit to Christian Cage. You could argue that this is some of the best work of his career, which is crazy to think about because of the age that he currently is at. Similar to Sting, I think you could make an argument that Sting was doing some of the best work in AEW of his career. Ultimately, he, in ring wise, probably not, but I think as a whole, the way he was presented was fantastic, and the way that Christian Cage has delivered week in and week out, it was a money decision to definitely keep that title on him. But what's crazy is that match would have probably been a match of the night contender if it wasn't on this card.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to shout out too, Nick Wayne's mom does an incredible job at doing basically nothing, but a lot at the same time.
Incredible.
What's there to complain about what she's done so far?
Well, at the beginning.
Correct. Yes,
but she
I'd
has
agree.
Getting better.
Maxine
Dupree-esque.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would say that's fair. But I think everybody in this family has. What are we calling them? Are we just going to call them the family?
Christian Cage family.
The Cage family.
The
I don't know.
Center.
Oh God.
Well, that's deep. Sorry,
no, I think this is just a matter of every puzzle piece in this faction has been doing its job incredibly well. You have the kill switch. Is he maybe going to turn at some point? 'Cause I don't know. I'm not sure if that's going to be left in the dust, because I mean, he was showing signs of wanting to turn.
They already did it. I don't think they revisit that again.
Wow. Okay.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like something that small and subtle is still in the back of your mind during these matches, which is another great idea of storytelling, which obviously is going to be with Christian Cage.
Kind says, calling them the family, stealing NXT gimmicks. Yikes, Ian. Stop being to Tony Khan's level. Ian doesn't watch NXT. He didn't know. And he else said better late than never. Hi, Kind. Thanks for stopping by. Nathaniel said, let's go Adam Copeland. I agree. I think Adam Copeland could be the TNT champion in a couple weeks. And Dirk, I will pull up your comment because you are a loyal listener. I'm not gonna. You'll read it if you're watching it live. I'm not gonna, for the listeners out there. You gotta watch it live. That's all. But anything else, or that pretty much sums it up there.
That wraps it up. It was a great start. Incredible
Very good
start to the
start.
pay-per-view. Yeah.
And it kept rolling too, because you had Bryan Danielson taking on Eddie Kingston for the Continental Crown Quadruple Heritage Cup thing that they have. As you know, I don't like all the titles in AEW, but nonetheless, that doesn't take away from the in-ring action, because this was, at the time, match of the night. And honestly, I would probably say it was close to being perfect. This is one of the best showings I think we've seen from Eddie Kingston in his tenure in AEW.
Yeah, and they set out to I love how the storyline is played out. My only issue with this is I still have no idea what Danielson is. I really don't. I
In terms of
understand.
face heel, is that what you're questioning?
Yeah, and I get it. AEW, they blur the lines a lot, but he's so back and forth to the point of even I'm confused, and I usually brush that stuff aside. I mean, Eddie Kingston is the perfect. I think he's like the perfect anti-hero blend. Anti-hero. Shout out Revolution. But no, Eddie Kingston, I think, is a great idea of it. Is a great worker. He could go in the ring. He shows signs of hating other people and just pure anger, but at the same time, he does what faces do. Danielson, on the other hand, depends on what night you see him. He could be kicking somebody in the face. He could be hitting somebody over the head with a chair. It just really doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not going to complain. I'm complaining right now, but I'm not going to complain any further because we're getting incredible matches out of him. So I'm just along for the journey. That's my only issue with this.
Listen, people, there's about 13 of you watching right now, and if you've listened to the show before, you know my stance on Eddie Kingston. I'm not an Eddie Kingston fan, but I kind of get it now. I kind of understand why people like Eddie Kingston. I see the potential in Eddie. He's just believable. He's real. And that's what's the most pure form of professional wrestling, when you bring real life stuff into it. He's always had a chip on his shoulder. That's the Eddie Kingston character. And now he's finally living up to expectations. He's defeating big names like a Bryan Danielson, who probably is the best technical wrestler right now on the planet. This is easily my favorite Eddie Kingston match. I would probably give it a 9.5 out of 10 if you were telling me to rate it. It was definitely, for me, the second best match of the night. The Sting stuff was fun, but I think in ring, this was definitely 1B to the 1A that we are going to talk about soon.
Honestly, it's hard to argue. There's a lot of matches on this card that you could throw them up as second best, because again, we'll get to it, but we know what was number one. Another thing too with Kingston, just his character, he is the common man. That's why people love him so much, and the fact that there's nothing physically that sets him apart from everybody else. Just he's a big dude. He's a chunky boy.
You would see at Revolution.
Exactly, and he has that mean demeanor of a Stone Cold Steve Austin. Can't talk as well, but at the same time, you want to love him because he's fighting for you, and he's fighting for himself. He's fighting for that honor. So I've gotten what Eddie has portrayed on screen character wise. I've been there. I understand what's going on.
See the vision.
Yeah, it's just early on, or in the early days, it kind of got old, but now it makes sense.
Yeah, now he's got belts to prove it. And that's where belts are good in this instance, where he's a credible champion. He's defending 3 titles. He's the workhorse of AEW. But you did mention that Kingston's kind of fighting for us. I would disagree. He did cut a promo saying, yeah, I care about my fans, but the main reason I do what I do is the respect of my other wrestlers. And that's what ultimately came out. That was the story here. It was just for Bryan to respect Eddie Kingston. You get that handshake at the end. I just have nothing to complain about, Ian, and that's good. I like coming on here and just talking about good shit, because this was good shit.
Yeah, and did you see the backstage promo by chance?
Yeah,
I think it was about 4 minutes, and it was just Eddie pouring his heart out. To those that did not listen, you could find it on Twitter or YouTube. It's somewhere out there. I would heavily recommend it. Kingston and Bryan Danielson. It was kind of funny. It was like kind of reminded me of like two friends after like fighting, getting into a genuine fight, and then just sitting on the couch and just like. So yeah, it was cool. It was a really cool aspect of it. So I'm hoping to see more from Danielson and Kingston. Maybe a tag team. I'm not sure, because it's one of those tag teams that you could see how BCC was formed, basically.
Yeah, that's why I don't think that's a possible tag team, because Bryan's affiliated with the BCC, which, by the way, I think the BCC has ran its course in AEW. I mean, they're doing great stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, It's similar to the Judgment Day. I think the Judgment Day kind of needs a little shake-up, if you will.
You know what? I could imagine. BCC, the first one to break off is probably Claudio. Big face turn. Moxley hasn't really shown any redeeming qualities as a face. Claudio has kept quiet. He's been a silent killer, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more hype for Claudio when he comes out. So, I don't know. Could be seeing that on the horizon.
Yeah, and Claudio is excellent in ring. So if he did break away from the BCC, got a little bit of a singles push, I don't think I'd be mad about it whatsoever. But that's all we got from that one. Let's run to the comment section as Kine has a few things to say. He's asking, did I miss the NXT Roadblock review? No, we're not doing that because Ian didn't watch it. I'm the only one that watched it, so you don't want to hear just one person talking about it, so we're not going to talk about it. Simple as that. Kine also goes on to say that Brian is very blurred at the moment. It's hard to say what he currently is. Not an Eddie Kingston fan, though. He's so mid. I used to have that same opinion, Kine, but after watching that match, my opinion has changed. I respect Eddie Kingston. I would shake my hand, Ian.
Shake my hand.
I want to shake his hand. I want to shake Eddie's hand.
I want to shake your hand.
That should have got more than 5
I know, that was funny. Got a good pop
for the people that are listening later, I sent that, the meme where he says, I want to shake his hand in the airplane. I put that out right after Brian shook hands with Eddie after the match. I thought it was great, but I think everything I do is great. But you know what wasn't?
What a dick.
The All-Star Scramble. I don't want to spend too much time on it because, like I said, this was a great pay-per-view, but what the fuck was the point, Ian? What the fuck was this?
I don't know. This was my poop break match, and I heard good things. I heard there was some meat that happened. I heard some meat chants while I was on the can. So I don't know.
I'm tired of the meat chants too. By the way,
I'm not necessarily. I understand. It's more of like a movement at this point. It's like
that Big E started.
Yeah, and it's really give our. I mean, I think AEW fans see it different. I think it's more of a give our big guys some love here because I'm starting to see a little bit with Brian Cage. I think people are starting to respect Brian Cage. He's been putting in a ton of work in AEW. He's been in a lot of matches, which I think people are starting to understand. And last night at Dynamite, he had a great showing too.
Yeah.
So I think that's mainly what the whole meat thing is about. I don't hate it at all, but I did hate this All-Star Scramble.
So did I. Because first off, if you're having 8 guys competing for a shot at the world title, and you said you're bringing back the rankings, shouldn't the 8 people be at the top of the rankings? Like, don't tell me you're bringing back rankings if you're not going to utilize them in stories, because then you're not bringing back rankings. They're just there to show a graphic. But ultimately, the right guy won. Wardlow goes over. That's cool. I'm happy for Wardlow. But you talk about the big guy problem in AEW. That's still a thing. Look at Lance Archer, the man that we got to speak to this weekend. I think he's been criminally underutilized in AEW. He can do things that guys half his size can't do. And, there's a couple things you can nitpick. Apparently, people caught on social media, Wardlow was just standing outside the ring while the little guys were doing shit inside the ring.
What do you expect?
That's just what happens. So.
When you have 8 people and he was scheduled for a 3-man match and then gets thrown an 8-man, I mean, pretty much it was a week before is when they changed it. I mean, they have some time to sort it all out, but when you throw a guy like, love the guy, but Dante Martin, he looked lost during this match as well.
Yep.
When you throw high flyers, I don't know. Another one, too, with Jericho, it felt like a sore thumb. It was ridiculous. Give us just the 3 guys that we wanted. I don't know why we threw in 5 other guys. I get it. Tony was probably looking at this and saying, yeah, these 5 guys could probably go on to Sting's retirement match card. That's probably what this all stemmed from. Oh, I don't have Jericho, my number 1 guy on this card that Sting's retiring on. I got to put him in there somehow. That's probably what it stemmed from at one point, but put it on the pre-show at that point.
Yeah.
We don't need to see it. Don't need to. We knew who was going to win.
For sure. And the right guy did win, but
yes.
It still wasn't exciting by any means. You bring up Jericho. I think we've talked about it before, but I'd like to reiterate the fact that, he had value at the beginning. He was the very first champion.
Yes.
You needed that name in the company at that time to put them on the map. Now we're at the time where I don't need to see Chris Jericho every week. And I'll show you this freaking GIF that I saw. Chris Jericho, when he sees an over young talent and it's some dude sprinting to the ring. That's the state that Chris Jericho's on. He's just latching onto these young guys, trying to make something, hopping from feud to feud. It's like, man, I don't care anymore.
And I respect Chris Jericho. He's one of my goats in pro wrestling. I still stand by that, even with all the backstage stuff. What I see in the ring and what I had seen and what the world has seen over his years, he is one of my goats. At the same time, he provided a shit ton for AEW. Recently, no one likes him. Let's be honest.
People still sing, but I think they're just singing because it's a catchy song.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I respect all he's done. He was a great first champion. He gave a lot of credibility to AEW. The factions he made, I understand what was happening with them. I mean, he gave Daniel Garcia the platform he needed to gain some traction and be where he's at now. Sammy Guevara.
Who's in
other
hot
than
water.
that,
I don't know if you saw that.
That kid is
Jeff
just
Hardy stuff. It just seems to be a problem. We don't need to talk about that. We're not talking about bad things anymore.
We're happy.
Keep going. We're happy and happy gags over here. So I am happy about this at least. We have a brand new international champion as Roderick Strong defeated Orange Cassidy, who is one of the workhorses of AEW. But I thought after this, Orange Cassidy was going to take a nice little vacation, but it looks like he's going to enter the tag team tournament with Trent. So good for Orange Cassidy, but even better for Roderick Strong. This is a guy that, in WWE was kind of just a faction member. He was just a guy in a stable. He was a great in-ring piece, but other than that, there wasn't much to him. Comes to AEW, finally gets a character over, and here he is. He's got the one singles title now in the Undisputed Kingdom. Ian, I think this was definitely the right decision to have Roddy win, and we got another fantastic match here out of these two as well.
Yeah, and we said it before, too. We don't know where the Undisputed Kingdom goes from here if he does not hold the title at the end of the night. Put on an incredible match, and I want to point out, again on Twitter, Orange Cassidy put down one of the greatest tweets of all time after the match, almost pretty much like 2 minutes after the match, tweeted out, "My back hurts," which I thought was pretty funny.
They had some spots in that match where I could see how his back hurt.
There was one spot, I think it was a turnbuckle. He got dropped onto the turnbuckle and basically flew out of the ring. And it got an audible gasp for me. Sold it well, as Orange Cassidy does. Orange Cassidy, paying all the respects to you. You are the whatever championship GOAT, whatever that called. International. Yeah, one of those.
It's on the screen, Ian.
Oh, I can't read.
Yeah, he's from Couch, people. You don't know where that's at? They can't read there. But you have gone on the record saying you're not a fan of the Undisputed Kingdom. Does Roddy having a belt, you have now Mike Bennett and Taven as ROH champions, and now Wardlow in the world title scene, make things a little bit more interesting for you?
Not more interesting. It's a good start. Still, I mean, even last night, I just want to point this out. Undisputed Kingdom comes to the ring, or comes to the stage, walks out, the entire faction sitting there. Adam Cole's looking there miserable in a wheelchair, and Swerve points it out. I just want to point this out because it felt weird to me. Swerve was basically dissing the entire faction. And again, love Swerve, love what he's been doing on the mic, but he murdered the faction on the mic by calling them out as just what they look like right now, and it's miserable. That was baffling to me. Just buried the entire faction.
Well, that seems to be a common trend in AEW. They typically bury their opponent instead of elevating or setting up their opponent for a rebuttal, which is something that I nitpick from time to time. But yeah, I think this definitely is going to help the Undisputed Kingdom, though, going forward. Roderick Strong, there's no doubt that he's one of the best in-ring talents that AEW has. And like I said, now he has that character to attach himself to, the faction. It's just going to be interesting now when Adam Cole comes back. Is there a sense of jealousy from Cole that all of his members have gold, or does Adam Cole maybe turn on one of his own members to get gold? That's what I'm curious to see.
I think what the writing on the wall is Wardlow gets a title. I don't think it's the main title. I don't see how that happens with what's going on right now with Swerve and Samoa Joe. And even Hangman. You could still keep Hangman in that conversation. Even with all that going on.
Hangman out of the conversation.
I don't know. He's one of those guys. He's always lurking there. I don't know. I'm still kind of lost with the AEW title picture, and I'm Again, it's not a complaint. I think it's in a great spot with so many contenders that could
Yeah.
hold that championship. Wardlow, I just don't see him winning on almost a random Dynamite. I mean, it's not a random Dynamite next week. It is the big business
money.
But ending Samoa Joe's reign like that would be kind of weird to me.
That's fair. No, I see where you're coming from. I would just personally like to see it as a guy that's a fan of Wardlow. Him. Win the title.
Yeah.
Storyline wise and stuff, I would say that it's probably not the right decision because, like you said, there are other names out there that are probably next in line. And don't forget, you still got Will Ospreay, who's heating up now. Kazuchika Okada. You have a returning Kenny Omega eventually. You have a returning MJF eventually. A lot of main event players there in AEW. So it's going to be interesting to see who then steps up to Roderick Strong for the international title, because I think there's a lot of viable mid-card guys that could get the opportunity. But he's one of those guys where I'd like to see him go out almost weekly. I know he's a heel, but I feel like this international title should be the workman's title. How would you feel about that? Every week. Orange Cassidy did it.
Orange Cassidy did set the tone for it, but that there's two separate characters there holding that title. Like you said, you pointed out, I mean, he's a heel. I think he takes his title, and I think he elevates himself as a heel by not defending it that much. I mean, Orange Cassidy has set the tone for that title that it's going to be defended pretty much every week, almost, if not every week. And I think Roderick Strong maybe points that out and says, this should be mine. I don't need to defend this thing. And I think that settles more for him. I would love to see him wrestle every single week, but as a faction, we're undisputed. Yeah.
I'm just looking at it from a fan's perspective. I would like to see
Roderick Strong absolutely, yes,
wrestle every single week, but I would get it if he didn't. But nonetheless, great match, good outcome. We move on to another fantastic match. Go figure. And it was between the Blackpool Combat Club and FTR. Going into this one, Ian, I think we both agreed that FTR might have needed it more, but after the match, I still think they're both in a good position because this is just two of the best tag teams they got right now going at it. Once again, it might get lost in the shuffle for some people because there was just so much good stuff that happened, but you got to give them respect because this was another great match, wasn't it?
It was. I won't lie. This was one of those matches I had to kind of like stay away from the TV. I had some other things going on at this time, so I was in and out with this match. But from what I did see, it was what I completely expected. And it was one of those feuds, too, that had been building over the weeks through matches, and still they innovated and kept the crowd into it. And again, the crowd that night fueled this pay-per-view, as AEW crowds tend to do at pay-per-views. I shouldn't say usually, but like you said, with FTR needing this, I don't know if this is a different direction for FTR. I mean, this wasn't a Barry loss at all, by any means at all, because BCC could beat anybody.
Yeah,
they are a formidable tag team. It's just I've been lost with FTR for a while. Still don't like him as faces at this moment. It feels too forced for me.
I saw someone after the match too, like, FTR is headed to WWE. No, dumbass. They just re-signed with the company. Just because somebody loses doesn't mean they're going to the other company. Just enjoy them for what they are here in AEW. And this is coming from a guy that leans towards the WWE. I enjoy FTR. I love what they do. And I thought they were great in this match. I think the craziest part, though, was that we had John Moxley in a match here, Ian, but he wasn't the one that bled. What's up with that?
I don't know. That was Dax, correct? Dax started bleeding.
Big bleed.
Actually, I was watching this with a friend who does not watch wrestling, and they pointed out, that's a lot of blood. Are they okay? And, I didn't even see the spot where it happened.
No, I didn't either. Sometimes you really can't pinpoint it, too. Wrestling Bros Podcast stopping by. Appreciate it, guys. They said they enjoyed this pay-per-view thoroughly. So did we. Wrestling Bros also bring up the point that the Blackpool Combat Club needed the momentum going into Mexico in 2 weeks. Now, that's something I was not familiar with. I'm assuming it's with the CMLL guys.
Most likely, I'm not sure.
But that's another thing I don't care about right now. Like, why should I care about CM, whatever their abbreviation?
You know, actually, before you move on, I did find that annoying as well. I think it was at the end of the show during the main event. It was Tony Schiavone trying to get over a CMLL guy that Jericho's facing on Saturday.
Yeah.
Again, I liked what they did with, what's his name? Abyss or something water.
Sure. Yeah.
Something water-based. But his dad was there. I thought that was a cool little storyline throughout the show. That was the only reason I cared about it. El Agua. Dasani.
It's water. Yeah, I like Dasani. Don't hate on Dasani.
Oh God, you're the worst.
I guess.
But yeah, no, I don't give a shit about these CML guys. I get it. It was probably it was probably some money transactions for Tony Khan to put him on the screen, but I could care less.
It's not like working with TNA. It's not going to get.
Yeah,
I'm not going to.
exactly.
I'm not going to tune into CMLL.
Exactly.
I will tune into TNA though, because they actually got some good stuff going on there. I'm sure they do in Mexico as well. But once again, like we always say, so much time in a week, not enough time to watch everything. But a good point also from the Wrestling Bros. I think the allegations with Cash is what's putting them stuck in neutral. That is a very fair point that I did not consider.
It halted everything. That wasn't exactly what had turned me away from FTR, if I'm being completely honest. It was just like the natural same thing, same promos, same everything. That's kind of what turned me away from it. Their promos feel forced. Everything feels like we're hardworking man kind of promos, and usually that works for me. No, I'm not at all. I don't work. I just do podcasts. No, it's a great point by Wrestling Bros in the fact that with the Cash allegations, because that was about the time that I kind of started falling off of them. But it had nothing to do with that.
That's just coincidence, but the point actually could be factual. But if you do want to help us make this our full-time job, go get some merch at the unmarkedwrestlingpodcast.com.
Yeah, let us not work.
I will give you a podcast every morning and every night if you make this my full-time job. Just saying, people. Get to work and buy our merch. But let's move on here to the Women's Championship match between Timeless Toni Storm and Deonna Purrazzo. Another solid one. This is probably my second least favorite, but then again, a lot of good matches on this card to stack it up to. A lot of people thought Deonna had a chance here, but Timeless Toni obviously is the one that walks out as champion, doing some fantastic work in the media scrum as well after. I don't know if you got to see that, but
yes.
The match itself, what'd you think? I thought it was just solid.
It was okay. I think this is one of those cases where the build-up was a lot better. I thought the tattoo basically removal. Toni altered her body for this storyline. That's a real tattoo that she changed.
It's still real to her, damn it.
It's still real to her. And I thought Deonna Purrazzo, as much as she could have done, I think she did as best as she could. Toni Storm she's a solid wrestler. I wouldn't put her in the.
Oh, she's good.
I mean, we really haven't had a chance to showcase that with the talent she's been up against. I should say that much.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the new character. I don't think the new character is supposed to be a high in-ring, work rate kind of person. But we know Toni. You saw Toni in the Mae Young Classic about a decade ago. You saw her at the beginning of AEW. She can go. She's a good wrestler.
You know what? I think they could change my mind with Toni Storm's in-ring by putting her against one person. I want you to guess who that is.
I don't know. DMD, Britt Baker. Okay. We've never seen that before? I thought we have.
If we did, that was Outcast Toni Storm, which is a completely different beast from what we're seeing now.
What?
Just give me Britt Baker back. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
That was going to be my question. Where the fuck is Britt Baker? I'm cussing a lot tonight. I told you I was pissed going into this. Good point from the Wrestling Bros. Mariah May wrestling as old Toni Storm now is going to be interesting. Yeah, it might have been just the character for that scene, but that was a comical moment as well.
That was cool.
It popped me getting the old theme, even though I hate the old theme. I'm like, oh, this is a new act in her character. No, it's Mariah May. She fooled me, but like they said, the media scrum was hilarious. I think that was my biggest takeaway from this. Also, Todd Helton's son, Tyler, stopped by. Tyler, thanks for stopping by. You didn't even understand that joke, did you? I said Todd Helton's son. You don't know who Todd Helton is? Rocky's legend at first base? Oh, wow. That's bad for a baseball guy. Tough luck. Everybody make fun of Ian in the comments for not knowing Todd Helton.
Please do.
She hasn't been cleared to wrestle yet. Is he talking about Mariah?
Mariah.
No, Britt. No, he's talking about Britt, I think. I don't know if that's true, because Britt's been gone for like a year. There's no way.
Almost a year and a half.
Has it been that long?
It's been over a year. Year and some change.
We talk about the faces. Britt Baker originally, in my opinion, was one of the pillars.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think they have pivoted elsewhere, but nonetheless, good stuff for Deonna Purrazzo. It's good exposure. Probably the most people she's wrestled in front of, with 16,000 people there. So good for her. Let's just hope she doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Apparently it's been 5 to 6 months. I feel like it feels longer than that.
She did not wrestle all last year, so she might have been on the screen, but was not in the ring.
Yeah, I was gonna say we haven't seen her wrestle on
Yeah.
Dynamite in all of 2023.
Yeah, 2023, she did not step in the ring.
Yeah, but maybe she left when Adam got hurt. I don't know if that's factual or not, but I feel like she's been out for a little bit longer than that. But nonetheless, still champion. Timeless Toni Storm. I'm assuming Mercedes Moné will be next in line for that title. I guess we will find out next week at Big Business. But let's move on here to a spectacle. One of my favorite matches I've ever seen between Will Ospreay and Konosuke Takeshita. Rarely am I at a loss for words, Ian. But when I say this match was perfect, I mean it. This was the match of the year, and it's only February, or only March, I should say. This was something.
Something is definitely the right start to how to explain what we saw on Sunday, and I mean even last night again. Oh my gosh, the walking to the ring. I love the presentation of Takeshita. Felt like an absolute beast walking to the ring, and had a brawl with Ospreay. I actually even like Don Callis on the mic on the outside. I thought he did a great job. He kept putting himself over, which is the Don Callis way, but also gave so much credibility to Ospreay and Takeshita. And I mean, Takeshita and Ospreay absolutely killed it. It was the perfect blend of just balls to the wall, spot fest mixed with the actual wrestling. Yeah. It's hard to explain. And I mean, even Ospreay, he got dropped. Again, we talked about the turnbuckle, getting dropped on the turnbuckle. Yeah. Fell upside down onto the turnbuckle, saw the bruise. It was disgusting. And saw the sign of respect afterwards between the two. So, I mean, that was just pure. That it felt like that is what New Japan offers, especially when Ospreay was over there, especially the psychology of everything. This was a perfect start to Ospreay's tenure in AEW.
This was, like you said, the perfect blend of high, spotty spots and, just good storytelling throughout the entire match. Everything made sense. Everything had a purpose. And that's my critique with spot fest of matches. Like, that didn't make sense. Why are you doing that? What are we doing here? But everything that Takeshita and Ospreay did was perfect. The chemistry was fantastic. The pacing was even good as well, because this match didn't start off very fast, but it definitely picked up as it went on. Ospreay goes over, but I don't think Takeshita loses anything by actually losing this match. No. You look at the grand scheme of things now. You have Ospreay, who's definitely a main event contender. Takeshita, who picked up some big wins months ago, has this great showing against Ospreay. I think he's right up there too in the main event scene. There really is just a influx of main event players now in AEW. This matchup, I don't know how any match is going to top it. Like, seriously. Yeah. When we watched this, we sat there and were like, how? How is any match better than what this was? There's no way. The
last 5 minutes or so, I was sitting there like this. A lot of that. Mouth wide open, I couldn't make a noise. I was just glued to the television. And another thing that did really well is, I mean, we haven't really seen this side of Takeshita. We know he could do it. We know he was able to put out a match like this. He's put on great matches, don't get me wrong, but not absolutely perfect bangers such as this. And then putting him with Ospreay, a new guy coming into the company. Well, I should say a new, in quotations, guy into the company. And basically, this was a showcase for Takeshita as much as it was for Ospreay. This really showed how much potential this young kid has in Takeshita.
Takeshita's fantastic. I think we've spoken his praises in the past before on this show, but just the perfect blend of two excellent wrestlers. WrestleBro said, I'm glad they brought back Takeshita's old theme. So am I. I was tired of the...
I don't think that's leaving. That's still Don Callis' theme.
Okay, it could be Don, but I'm glad. I agree with the WrestleBros. I'm glad Takeshita actually got his old theme.
I do want to ask you this before we move on, because, I mean, there's not much to say about the match other than watch it. Watch it. I do want to ask this, because, I mean, obviously we saw with last night with Kyle Fletcher after their match as well. It worked out pretty much exactly like Takeshita's. Another great match, and a lot of people were cheering at the end. And they both ended the same way as well, with Don Callis coming into the ring to kind of like say, hey, good job, boys. Good job on the wrestling match out there. But the crowd was still absolutely mauling him with boos, Don Callis, as soon as he entered the ring. I want to ask you, where would you like to see this go with the Don Callis family?
You're going to hate this, but I don't really have an answer. I haven't really
No,
sat here and thought about
that's
it.
a fair answer.
It's one of those situations where I'm like, I'm invested already. You got me. So just do whatever you plan on doing and I'll react to it. I'm either going to hate it or I'm going to love it. And I think that's good. I don't have a prediction for it. There's no way I think it should go. I'm just here to enjoy the ride. I think Will Ospreay, you talked about the reactions that he got there and during that entrance after the match. He just screamed star. Ospreay, Ospreay, going from one side of the arena to another. And the fans are already doing it. There's bruv signs. I tell you what, bruv, this guy might be the next best thing. Actually, he might not be next. He might be the best thing right now.
Yeah, especially in ring. And just back to where the Don Callis family goes, I'd like to see something maybe with the family actually reuniting and banding together. Yeah. I mean, it really reminds me of a family. You got a father figure in Don Callis. I know there's a lot of fathers in AEW, but it's kind of a cool little feeling that it was Takeshita and Ospreay absolutely hating each other. They had to fight to start banding together as brothers. They hugged. Yep. They gave each other their respects and handshake. You obviously have Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay. They already have that connection. Saw that last night, and we saw the love they have for each other. I don't know. Could be something. Maybe they band together, fight against the
family.
The family.
The Don Callis family. The Don Callis family.
Yeah, so
not the family in NXT. Which
don't hurt me.
Sorry, I hate Tony D'Angelo. Just can't stand him. Just can't stand him. A couple more matches here to talk about. Samoa Joe retained his AEW championship against Swerve Strickland and Hangman Page. Another fantastic match once again here on Revolution's card. We talked about how everybody is behind Swerve, how a lot of people thought he was going to be the one to win, but once we saw the card start to shake out and we knew Sting was actually going to main event, I thought the writing was on the wall that Joe was going to end up retaining. And ultimately, Ian, I think that is the right decision going forward.
Yeah, and again, this was another great storytelling in their match. It was great psychology. It was literally Hangman saw the opportunity to lose just so Swerve can't have that title. And I didn't really pick it up until Swerve's reaction. He understood what happened while he was on the ground. Watch Hangman tap. Yeah, it was Hangman tapping early, which was it was pretty early when you watch it back. He started to fade, and he's like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to tap.
Yeah.
And then Swerve gave that reaction of, that motherfucker just tapped. Sorry for cussing. Sorry
for cussing.
But that no, it was really cool.
Sketch.
So, and now they're playing off that story. I don't know if that was the intent of everything, but if that wasn't the intent of what that finish was to the match with Hangman tapping to Joe, bravo to Swerve, because he just created a brand new story and another kink in the story between him and Hangman. Yeah, another layer.
Yeah, I don't really want Hangman in the title picture anymore. I feel like he's gotten a lot of opportunities and he's been unsuccessful with it. But I do believe that Swerve eventually is going to be the guy to take that title off of him, whether that's at AEW Dynasty, just to, make a statement there. At your very first pay-per-view called Dynasty, you have the very first African-American World Heavyweight Champion. I think that would be a good decision. Or you prolong it and you go to Double or Nothing. It doesn't matter because ultimately Swerve Strickland is inevitable. Mm-hmm. The stuff that he's doing right now is fantastic. You could see the vision. He is the guy, but you got to give some love to Samoa Joe as well. This is a vet that really never got his shot in the WWE. It was, a lot of injuries kind of pushed him back down the card there in WWE, but he's doing some of the best work right now of his career as well.
And it's cool to see, too, because, he was frustrated. He's voiced his frustrations with WWE. He understood why he kind of sat the sidelines for everything due to injury, due to age. But it looks like he's having so much fun in AEW, and he's given a shot with that title, and he's killing it. He's just doing the normal Samoa Joe stuff of, I don't care who you put in front of me. This is my title that I have over my shoulder. Step up. And it works. It works beautifully because he puts on great matches.
There's a reason people chant, Joe is gonna kill you, because people actually believe that Joe could kill you. And I definitely think he could kill a man. He could kill a couple men for sure.
He would kill me.
Just good stuff. Glad he retained. Not my favorite match of the night, but nonetheless, very, very good. And shout out to the 27 people of you watching live right now. We would greatly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, because we are just, I think, under 20 away from 300, a big milestone of ours. We just hit 1,000 followers on TikTok, and we're slowly approaching 700 on X. So at Pod on the Mark is where you can find us on all of our socials. But
live every Thursday.
That is correct. The big thing that obviously everybody was really, waiting to see here at Revolution was the final match of the legend, the icon Sting, as he and Darby Allin teamed up to take on Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, the Young Bucks. I for one, am surprised to see Sting go out on top. A lot of the people back in the day, that's the old-fashioned way, is you go out on your shoulders. But after watching it, after seeing how it was presented, Ian, I get it. It makes sense, and it was fantastic.
It was a perfect moment. From the entrance, the little promo before the entrance, it was a little 4-minute movie segment. It brought some tears to my eye, and then when I heard it's showtime for the last time, I'm getting chills now. I honestly might go watch that back because it was incredible. And then his two legitimate sons looking exactly like Sting in his old gear, which was his gear.
Sting,
The one son in the Surfer Sting costume, by the way, did release a YouTube video talking about his experience, and he's been training for like 2 years now. And he talked about his conversation with his brother and saying, "We just don't want to mess this up." And the love
podcast,
that would be awesome. Yeah, we could reach out to him. Okay. But it was a cool feeling. That entire main event was a feel good adventure that we went through. That was pure wrestling, pure like professional wrestling.
I was gonna say it wasn't wrestling.
No,
it was
more
of a car crash, but it was a very fun car crash.
Yeah, it was beautiful. A beautiful car crash.
I thought Darby Allin was gonna die in this match, but we will talk about Darby here in a second. Just overall, I don't think you could have done it better.
No.
Putting it in the main event was the right call. I totally agree with that. Sting deserves the main event. You have 16,000 or something people there in Greensboro, North Carolina, an iconic city and, relevant to Sting's history in wrestling. It just made all the sense in the world for him to ultimately be the one to hold those titles at the end of the night. And that's just a very unique way to go out. But the match itself wasn't much of a match. It was, a lot of weapons were being utilized. But Darby Allin, man, I know you're climbing Everest in a couple weeks and you could die there, but you almost died there. That was real glass. That is one of the most insane spots I've ever seen. Usually I sit here and I'm like, that wasn't necessary, but I'm not going to sit here and say it was, but
the thing,
I will about it.
I will say this. He's been getting a lot of flack for doing the spot, but at the same time, you got to understand that over the past 2 years, this Sting has been literally his mentor, his father figure, and he's carried him through some of the greatest moments of Sting's career. This run in AEW will be remembered as Sting's last run and one of his best runs of all time. And Darby was along in every single match that Sting had. So, I mean, obviously we don't know the backstage talk about what Darby was going to do, what the talk was going to be. But Darby obviously wanted to do this for Sting because it created one memorable moment. It really did. It went wrong. It was real glass. Yes. It was scary, very scary, but it worked out in the end. And it was like in a weird but beautiful and scary way. It was kind of like heartwarming that Darby would put his body through what he did for Darby.
He sacrificed himself for Sting.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I got from it. I didn't see him being stupid. I mean, it was stupid in hindsight. At the end of the day, it was really stupid to do it. But at the moment, I was like, "Holy shit, this kid really does like Sting means a lot to this kid." That's what I felt.
The 12 stitches definitely.
That's impressive. That's honestly impressive.
Kind of unscathed, I guess we could say.
You got lucky.
I'll tell you what, if my ass is falling, then I'm dead. I'm not coming back. Pull the plug on me. I don't care if I have nothing wrong with me. I want the plug pulled anyways. But Wrestling Bros goes on to say Darby said that there was one spot he had to have in the match and that they had a backup plan for the ending had he not been able to get up. Yeah, it's probably smart to have a backup plan, but I think the Jacksons are going to be fine coming out of this because like we talked about in the past, they can create whatever they want. They're going to be involved in the tag team title picture going forward. They're probably going to put themselves in the tournament, I'm sure. And they might go back to what you were saying last week. Maybe people lay down for Matt and Nick.
I really hope they do it. I'm glad they announced the tournament because I figured that's where it was going to go. Because I had Sting winning this thing, and and another thing too, I love how Sting wasn't on Dynamite last week or this past week, last night. I guess
that's it.
That's smart. He's done. He's done. Because I fully expected Tony Khan to have him in a backstage, like, how did you feel during your last match here in AEW? And he didn't do that. So credit to Tony Khan for not pulling the trigger. I'm sure he wanted to as much as he wanted to. But Sting, from OTM to you, because I know you're listening. Thank you for all you did for wrestling. Yes.
Yeah, I started watching wrestling in 2011. I only got to experience the brief WWE run, a little bit of TNA, and of course his final run in AEW. But thank you, Sting, for all that you did for the wrestling business. One of the most iconic careers of all time. And honestly, credit to AEW on how they handled this, because I thought this was the perfect ending to a nearly perfect pay-per-view, which leads me to my next question, Ian. What's your letter grade for AEW Revolution? Because you talked about it. You said it was the best AEW pay-per-view ever. I would assume you're going to give it an AA+.
It's a 98% for the two mediocre matches. That includes the All-Star, and that includes Toni Storm and Deonna Purrazzo.
Hi, sir. I saw Eric from the Wrestling Junkies. He put Timeless Toni and Deonna on his Match of the Year candidates. We respect you, Eric, but I'm gonna disagree with you though.
No.
But there was so many matches on this card that Danielson, Kingston, the BCC versus FTR, Christian Cage versus Daniel Garcia, Ospreay versus Takeshita. I think you all can make a case for Match of the Year, but at the end of the day, I think the only one, since there were so many good ones, that I'm going to put as a Match of the Year candidate is Ospreay versus Takeshita. That's the biggest takeaway, besides Sting. His final match, which was fantastic in itself. For me, it's an A. It's a 95. I think it's the second best pay-per-view AEW has ever put together. Yep. Behind All In, of course, in 2021, or maybe it was 2022. I'm not sure. It's the one in Chicago where Danielson and Adam Cole showed up, but it was the one that we were at.
It was All Out.
Yeah, All Out. That's what I meant to say. Wrestle Bros said Danielson versus Kingston had loads of storyline injected into it.
Yeah.
As it did. Yeah, it was definitely, it was probably my second favorite.
It was Daniel Garcia versus Christian Cage. Like, genuinely, I felt it was weird. It was one of those moments in wrestling where you really get behind a guy and you really understand it, and I clicked with Daniel Garcia during that match.
Wrestling.
Yeah, it was a weird feeling.
Yeah, wow, weird feeling when
in
they
AEW.
actually make you feel the way you're supposed to feel. That's what it's saying. So A's across the board here from OTM. Hats off to them. Good job. Great show. It's just, where do we go next? But there's a lot of directions they could go next, especially now knowing that Kazuchika Okada is officially All Elite. He showed up on Dynamite, but we're getting a different Okada that we might have been used to. He worked a lot of babyface in New Japan, was one of their top stars, and if not the top one of the past decade. And here he is, aligning himself with Matthew and Nicholas Jackson. I think that's a nice twist going forward, Ian.
Yeah, and I think it worked out perfectly. It was honestly kind of a smart move doing this with, Okada is kind of linked to the Elite in with the Jackson brothers. And it's a really stupid dig, and it's really petty of the Jackson brothers, but now they could do it, and they won't, they're going to get shunned for it, but it's what they're supposed to do as fans because they are heels. And it's going to be a nice little look. You got a newcomer coming in. We've already seen him before in the AEW scene, but you have a newcomer coming in as a heel. You're not supposed to like him, which it was weird because it's like a debut that it kind of falls flat. It's like, oh, that's kind of weird. Why is he siding with them? And I think that's perfect. That's how I felt with seeing the news. Yeah, it's a good twist. Good twist.
Yeah, because the easy thing to do is Okada comes into AEW and he's fighting all the bad guys. Well, we just got this guy named Will Ospreay that's literally doing that right now. We don't need two big baby faces that are very similar. So Okada aligning himself with the Elite is going to be good stuff going forward. But ultimately, I don't know if that's the long-term play. I would assume Okada eventually is going to, cut ties with Matthew and Nicholas. But I think ultimately this sets up Okada versus Omega at All In. Once Omega is fully recovered, that is the direction you go. Because while Omega's gone, they basically just replaced him with Okada, which is not a bad replacement.
No, not at all. And again, another shout out to a tweet. I don't know if you saw it with Kenny Omega. He tweeted out that infamous Kenny Omega meme where he's staring at the camera going,
Yeah.
He looks like he has no eyebrows. It was, it got me really good.
It's crazy right now. It's sort of like AEW is getting a shot in the arm. I feel like they're starting to pick up the steam they
It's
once
clicking.
had. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're competition to WWE. They're not.
Never will be.
They're an alternative. We've said it numerous of times, but they're a great alternative because you know what you're going to get every time you turn on AEW television. Just good pro wrestling. And they are bringing in top names. I mean, Okada, the face of New Japan. Will Ospreay, one of the faces of New Japan. Mercedes Moné, who was one of the faces of WWE, as Sasha Banks. There's going to be a surplus of talent here. I don't know how Tony Khan's going to book it all. I really don't.
There's got to be some cuts. I mean, genuinely, as sad as that is to say. I mean, another guy too. They just signed Brian Keith, and what do you do with him?
Lost.
Yeah, it's
ROH.
scary. I mean, again, I'm not going to complain as a fan because there's not much to complain about when you're throwing stars at us, and if you continue these storylines that they're throwing at us.
Yeah, not much to complain about indeed. So we spent a lot of time talking AEW. It was a full AEW show this week, but we had a lot to cover. Usually we lean towards WWE anyways, but I would assume there's going to be a lot of WWE talk coming up, especially on the Main Event Mixer this Sunday, episode 4. Make sure you're following us at mainevent_net. A couple comments here from the Wrestle Bros before we sign off. We have a pay-per-view every month for 3 out of the next 4 months, so maybe shorter but juicier storylines. Yeah, I totally could see that. And he said, by the way, Omega was on Twitch today and made a comment about it. So
I'll have to look it up.
Omega has acknowledged the fact that Okada is a part of the Elite. So here we are towards the end of episode 185, and if you don't know what the MVM is, it stands for the most valuable mark, the person that interacts with the show, gives us quality comments, and is just straight up having a good time in the comment section every single Thursday. You know, it started off with Kine. Kine came out the gates, he was talking to us, and then he disappeared. I'm assuming Kine did not watch Revolution, that's why, but there's definitely a good amount of people that stuck through till the end. I appreciate all of you, but it's an easy call for us this week. We have a new MVM of OTM, and it is the Wrestling Bros Podcast. So shout out to the very first time winner right there. That's good to see.
Yeah, it was really cool seeing Kind show up and say better late than never, and then never really showed up. He got scared from competition, ran away, tail between his legs, saw the AEW talk and realized, oh shoot, I hate AEW, I can't be here, and just disappeared. Which was I'm not complaining.
Hey, he says he's an AEW realist.
Right, a realist, yes.
And he says the MVM has spoken. Enjoyed the show. We enjoyed having you. It was a good time talking some AEW. But like I said, a lot of exciting stuff coming up. We are officially on the road to WrestleMania. Wrestling Bros talked about the fact that there is 3 AEW pay-per-views coming up in the next 4 months. So we're going to have plenty of things to talk about. Keep your eyes peeled for some interviews coming up. We talk about Warrior Wrestling. We are building a stronger relationship with them, which is opening a few doors for us. And we're hoping that we will be able to present some of their talent on this show going forward, specifically you, Trevor Outlaw. We're going to give you the platform to speak your mind.
Hero.
But Ian, before we sign off, any final remarks?
No, for the new viewers, had a great show, great viewership tonight. For those that are listening and maybe for the first time ever, follow us at mainevent_net for the Main Event Wrestling Network. And if you are a content creator that loves wrestling, wants to talk about wrestling, wants to blog about wrestling, do anything about wrestling. We need editors. We need anything that you are willing to do. We just pick
TikToks.
TikToks. Oh, please, TikToks. I hate TikToks.
I'm the only one doing TikToks, guys. I need a partner in crime. I'll give you the keys to the kitchen.
We got the tick. We need the talk.
Mm-hmm.
That was bad.
But yeah. All
right. And also go to the onthemarkwrestlingpodcast.com, as you can see right there in the text, to get your On the Mark Wrestling merch. You can get an honorary Mark shirt. Any proceeds that come from those purchases come straight back to this podcast. We might pocket it like a quarter or something like that. That's about it.
I'm barely making any money, people.
Yeah, no. Go straight back into the podcast, to the production of this podcast, and hopefully this will grow a little bit more. But we will be back every single Thursday, as we have been. I don't know the last off week that we've had.
Well, we might have one coming up.
Oh,
March 20th, I leave for Las Vegas. In knowing how busy Jim Tucker's schedule has been,
it's a one-man show.
Unless you want to find
Give me
somebody
the
to
reins.
co-host with you, or bring in Marini or whoever you'd like.
I'll do a show with Marini. I'll do a show with Marini.
If you can figure it out, and if you want to run the show, Ian, I will give you the keys to the kitchen. Because like you said, we really don't take weeks off anymore, and we pride ourselves on that. So keep your eyes peeled. Follow us on the socials at Pod on the Mark. Shout out to our co-host, Jim Tucker. It's baseball season, guys. He's not leaving the podcast. He had a game today, so hopefully his team won. Hopefully his newly born son, Augie, is doing well, and he will be back on this podcast. I guarantee it. Don't spend all that money in one place now. I tell you what, all 25 cents, I'm going to go get me a nice gumball from the machine over here at Shoops. As Jim Tucker would say, it's a great time to be a wrestling fan. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the On the Mark Wrestling
Podcast.